So, hello, it's been quite a while since my last video, and of course it's time to return with a nice little Souls-like, Mortal Shell 2. I was quite a fan of the first Mortal Shell, however the game was very experimental and definitely rough around the edges. This beta and demo makes the first game look like a beta or a test demo, because it improves upon virtually everything from the first game and then some. The Mortal Shell 2 demo overall is quite a lovely experience, and while I do think there are still few things that could be ironed out and improved, overall it was a very enjoyable game and I have high hopes for the full release. In this sort of review I intend to walk through the whole demo and talk about everything, what I noticed, realized, what I liked, disliked, and even talk about the first game and what changed and was improved. I saw a lot of people already talking about the Mortal Shell 2 demo and praising it, however my video is more scripted than those and also looks at the first game, so I think this video stands out, and especially for the fans of the first game, this video should definitely be something great. If you enjoyed this kind of content, please be sure to like and subscribe, it helps out the channel massively and I would really appreciate it. But now, without further ado, let's jump into the Mortal Shell 2 video. Now, before you even start playing, you get to do some settings and such, nothing too important besides the camera. This game has an immersive camera and an action-oriented camera. I did my first playthrough mostly with the immersive camera because I thought I liked being immersed and I like stuff like that. However, I will say after trying the action camera on a second playthrough, I do think I will tend to play with this one because it just makes the game feel way more fun and, well, looking like a traditional Souls game and Souls-like. Though the immersive camera probably has its uses for maybe more cinematic playthroughs. But yes, after these settings and tuning damage numbers, neat, the game begins. This game now finally starts with one of those awesome exposition cutscenes you already know from the FromSoft games. That is really cool. The first game had more of a mysterious ending with some text and then you just being thrown into this weird interim or whatever. This game, however, takes a more direct approach, instantly referencing the first game. And what I find really cool is that everything in this game happens because of the ending of the first game. The ending of the first game was bizarre, weird, and I didn't understand what it meant back then. However, now it all makes sense. Basically, it created this new entity called the Undermatter, which is a central focus point of this whole game. I like how this entity brought prosperity and everything to these people. However, at some point, people got greedy. They started stealing and plundering her ova, eggs or whatever, and then everything basically went to shit. And now you wake up and are met with an undead crow with a skull inside its head. Definitely an eerie design. So far he doesn't tell you anything besides to get up and going. So you do just that. You are in this weird village where the villagers are preparing for a ritual of some sorts, and I think they're praising or revering you as some higher being. You even get gifted a beautiful flower crown to remember us. I don't like the sound of that at all. The ritual also seems to involve some blood in some way, which again adds to the very unsettling nature of it. As we approach the center of the village ritual, we see a familiar face. Wait, who is this? This is very, very familiar. After being ported to a interim part area again that reminds me of the Meteor Arena from Elden Ring, the Undermatter talks to you directly. Oh my god, Harris! If you didn't notice, this is basically the first shell you get in the first game in Mortal Shell 1. He's basically your starter and just a solid all-rounder. And wow! Now I get to use Harris again. That's awesome. What I also found interesting is the Undermatter saying, "I'm more than just a weapon," which is very ominous, and I feel like this line will be very important for the plot of this game later. Anyways, after taking Harris, we get tossed back into the real world and oh dear, this is just an unsettling sight. Everyone in the village is dead. Seemingly a blast that could have happened ages ago or a mere second ago. Honestly, I don't know. The time seems to be very convoluted and I find that very interesting. But yeah, TLDR, everyone is dead and petrified. And in this mess, we of course see our companion again, the undead bird. He introduces himself as Rook and gives you your first objective, to reach your home where your real disciples are. Alright, sounds interesting enough. This is also where the tutorial section of the game begins. Right off the bat, the controls and the movement feel so much better. Now, instead of feeling floaty and kind of unstable, the walking feels very good. It feels more heavy, and it's definitely not as smooth as like Souls games, but it's not really robotic as it was in the first game. As you fight through the few enemies, testing your attack buttons, you find a beacon. Beacons are the equivalents of bonfires in this game, and they are basically your checkpoints. However, this game has something very interesting, which I'm sure, with what I've seen in the demo, will be expanded upon even further, and that is corruption. Some beacons are corrupted and need to be cleansed. In order to do this, you usually enter the beacon and have to clean up some sort of mini dungeon. The first one is rather simple and nothing too crazy. However, further in the demo, I already seen a few that either hold some mini bosses or maybe even some puzzles, which is very cool and very promising. I like this feature alone, it's a very cool mechanic. Herasphere is a shell, and every shell has shell abilities. And Herasphere can basically make an AoE harden to inflict break damage upon everyone. Break damage is basically posture damage. If you fill the bar up, you can riposte the enemy. Very simple, and if you know Souls games, you probably know what I'm talking about. It's also important to mention that in this game, if you get knocked out of your shell, you get a second chance where you can reclaim it. In the first game, you had to walk up to the point where your shell kind of died and touch it again. In this game, however, you need to attack and be aggressive to regain your shell, and then you just turn into it. It's a bit comparable to the Lies of P blood vials, the way you can recharge it if you played that game. After finding a mini boss, it gives me proper Dark Souls 2 PTSD, where there are exploding enemies jumping at you. You explore a bit more, fight a few more enemies, learn the perfect guard, and suddenly find yourself in a cave. And this cave looks suspicious. Well, that is one boss fight arena if I've ever seen one. Say hello to the Tar Golem. This is the first proper boss in the game, and as many Souls like at this point, it's pretty cliche, but it's still very cool, is that this boss intends to defeat you. However, you can still defeat the boss, but you will still lose anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And I like that this even gives you an achievement. However, sadly the achievement is bugged for me, and even though I went back and defeated the boss, I didn't get it, which is just sad. However, after you defeat this boss or die to him, sadly you don't get any reward, which is very disappointing. But even more sadly, Heras, trying to save you, actually dies, which is very interesting because this game says multiple times that these shells are way more than just flesh. These shells are actual sentient beings, and Heras protected you, giving his life for you, which is super interesting, and I really wonder if this will be relevant further in the plot. But yeah, this is a permanent consequence. You lost Heras. You are the Harbinger now. You can't inhabit Heras anymore. So, in hopes of finding new shells and maybe new stuff, you press on and continue. After claiming your first OVA a bit down the line, you are teleported towards an area with a lot of cliffs and hanging bridges, and a really nice track starts playing. And with this, you finally reach the Marrowkeep. Marrowkeep is your hub, and this area starts with a few cultists basically expecting your return and thanking the Grandmother for us. Guys, all this attention is rather stressful. I just arrived, so maybe please don't do that. Anyway, one super unsettling detail I find is, after you enter this Marrowkeep, the gate shuts tight and you can't escape, which is terrifying and really makes me wonder what is going on here. Am I being used? Am I being manipulated and lied to? Is Rook even my friend? Or is Rook just using me? I don't know, but I think we'll find out later, considering what the old prisoner did in the first game. But yeah, this is just a very curious and interesting place. Some theorizing aside, this place is everything you need in a Souls hub. It has the merchant guy who sells you stuff. It has the smithy or upgrade station, which I really like in this game, because the machine that upgrades your stuff is treated like a living or sentient being. And honestly, looking at it, it might be one. You find stuff that basically allows you to tune more and more, and I find the mechanics of upgrading in this game rather interesting and pretty cool. You even have a training area of Sester Janessa from the first game, which is again super interesting and also super nice because I love training dummies and training areas. Lies of P once again did that very well. And yeah, that's about it for the normal guys. However, there are also a few more interesting characters. There's this guy who wants to wash your feet. Okay, are we sure Miyazaki is not involved in this? No idea what is with this guy, but yeah, we'll see about that later in the game, I suppose. There's also this big place where you place all the ova, and yeah, you get some rewards here, but this also seems like a place that will be important and you need to fill everything. Then there is also the shell keeper. This lady tells you a lot about shells, and in this room you probably can select what shell you want to wear, and later in the game, once you unlock glimpses and stuff, you can learn more about the shells and unlock more about their stories, more about their abilities. So this is a very important room. Yeah, in general, I think this place will be super interesting during the game, and I can't wait to talk with all the NPCs. After you explore the hub, you take a lift, which is a super fast lift that launches you to the top of the Marrowkeep, and now look at this. Look at this. This is so cool. I think Mortal Shell 2 might have one of the coolest fast travel animations or like transitions to new areas I've ever seen. It's so over the top, I absolutely love it. So you know when you touch a bonfire, you teleport somewhere, I don't know, through time or whatever. It's cool, it's nice. So what about being disintegrated into atoms and turned into a comet to fly to another side of the map and being rebuilt afterwards? That's so metal and cool, I absolutely love it. But yeah, you select your first location and off you go. Now we landed in the big proper open field or open world section, call it however you want, but basically it works similarly as in the first game. You land in the big map where you have different structures and points of interest scattered around, and eventually after fighting yourself through this, you encounter some big glowing gates that teleport you to more condensed dungeons where you face the bosses. This is kind of how the first game worked, and I really love it. It also kind of reminds me of the Demon Souls Archstone system, which is really cool because I really love Demon Souls. So now then, let's get to exploring. First we wander up and do one of the trials. The trials are basically places where you fight hordes of enemies and get a reward. These will be scattered throughout the game, and I'm really excited to find more of these. And upon further exploration, we find Gorf. Gorf is kind of a meme character, just being frog spelled backwards, and he was in the first game too, and now he's back. However, sadly, apparently he's sick, and now we need to feed him some mushrooms to maybe help him get better. I really do hope we can save him because I don't want anything bad to happen to our friend. Afterwards, however, we uncover the real enemy of this demo, and that's the walls prohibiting us from going to new places. Yeah, it makes sense limiting the area, but man, I'm just curious and can't wait to see what's behind it. Well, after exploring a bit further, we find the first, more major mini-boss, which is the Great Arbiter of Flesh. And on this guy, I want to demonstrate a bit of a change in combat philosophy, because Mortal Shell 2, unlike its predecessor, has no stamina. Yep. The stamina bar was completely removed, which is a massive change. And honestly, I thought it would make the game easy, but until I kind of understood it, this guy killed me a few times. So, one thing that changed for sure that I noticed is bosses and enemies seem a lot more aggressive. I will talk about this more later once I do the more condensed dungeon, but the enemy density also seems to have increased because you have tools to deal with the enemies now and no stamina bar, so now they will throw more enemies at you. And another thing that I absolutely need to talk about that helped me in this encounter or was a blessing was the healing system. The healing system in the original was not good. You had to parry to get some HP back or eat some consumable mushrooms that regrow. That was a flawed system, and I appreciate the idea, but I just think it was not really fun and slightly tad bit too punishing. Well, in Mortal Shell they go to a pretty boring route at this point, where you basically just have flasks that fill up after every rest, just a typical soul system, but it's just such a good system and it works, so it makes sense. You also find materials throughout the world that can upgrade them, just your typical souls healing, and yeah, maybe if it ain't broken, don't fix it. After beating the Great Arbiter of Flesh, you basically wander more around the world. And initially, I kind of planned to go through everything that I did, but I don't really think there's a need for that, and I don't want to take away everything from the exploration, so we'll just talk about a few important places. First, after receiving the map in the hub, I wanted to unlock a shell, because because, well, Harris is kind of not with us anymore. So I wanted to hunt Teal, which is also a shell from Mortal Shell 1. And now they had a really cool thing where you unlock the shell, and instead of just getting some dialogue from Sister Janessa, you now get like little memory sequences that you play where you see the story on display, which is really awesome and a big motivation to unlock all the shells and their stories in and in itself, because I just want to know more about them, not just for their abilities, which is really awesome and a smart way to make the story and the systems work in tandem. After unlocking Teal, however, I wanted to make my way to unlock the new weapon, and then I discovered the Mushroom Village. This seems to be a very bizarre place because there seems to be a constant festival going on. Everyone is dancing. However, once you approach them, they aggressively try to attack you. The inhabitants are absolutely terrified and hiding in their houses, and the whole vibe is just bizarre. Exploring here was super fun, interesting, and while I messed up the puzzle and only got the weapon way later, basically you have to go through this weird gate to unlock the puzzle, and then you need to go into this little side path, unlock this door, do this mini dungeon, and then there you'll get the new weapon, which is, by the way, super fun to use. Probably prefer it over a sword, but both are really good options. After going further into the area, being limited by the barriers and making the map way more linear than it's definitely supposed to be, you eventually arrive at the aforementioned glowing gate and decide to go in. Well, the Sunken Village. These are something that are a bit akin to Elden Ring's Legacy dungeons. It's more of a focused level that has a certain theming, some certain enemies, and you basically fight yourself through, and at the end there's a boss awaiting you. Overall, I do like swamps, and yeah, what would be a Souls-like without a good old poison swamp? However, calling this a poison swamp is not even really true, because besides some enemies that can poison you, there is not much poison to be found. What you can find, on the other hand, are big frog mages, which is really cool, and they're a bit goofy, honestly, and not as typically Mortal Shell weird type, but honestly I like them. I think they're pretty nice. Also, the atmosphere and vibe here is pretty damn nice, and I like that there are some mechanics like shooting hornet nests that then create AoEs that harm you or the enemies. Stuff like these level gimmicks and special things in areas is something I want to see more of in the game, and I think they really can succeed making unique levels. As I mentioned, the encounters here get a bit more brutal, because instead of having just a few enemies that you fight and basically just fodder, you now have to fight quite a bit of them at once, and they also get a bit more aggressive and brutal because, yeah, you have no stamina. So to not make the game super easy, the game needs to account for that, and I think they did that quite well. Though I will say, in general, I really do hope the game gets a bit harder, because it wasn't that hard so far. As you work through the area, find beacon after beacon, you eventually find probably one of the funniest bosses I've ever seen, the Tar-Blighted Shepherd. This guy plays some flute and controls the sheep to attack you. It's a silly little fight and it's super easy, non-threatening, but as you fight, suddenly the shepherd enchants you and turns you into a sheep, and then you fight as a sheep, you fight the sheep to beat the shepherd. It's so silly and wacky, and honestly, I don't know what the idea is or what this fight is supposed to do, but it's really funny, so I appreciate it existing. After this fight, however, you are on your way to the final boss of the area, and that boss is Magdalena, the Lady of the Swamp. So, a lady in a fire-powered wheelchair riding around using the fires to zone you away, and then she also has support of some malformed babies that remind me of the Demon Souls Plague babies. For sure an interesting design. I know Mortal Shell is known for its crazy designs, I suppose, but this is very bizarre. Not in a bad way. However, as much as I want to praise the unique and creative design, I do think this boss definitely needs some tuning. Some of the hitboxes feel bizarrely tight or weird. Like, for example, this unparryable attacks just feels very weird to dodge. And in general, this fight just needs more, I think. It's not a horrible fight, but it's not great either. I think bosses are something that needs a bit of a better showcase later into the game. But yeah, this boss is not horrible, and of course it's not dethroning Mesmer, but as much as I don't think it's incredible, I think it's still a pretty cool experience and definitely should at least be praised for its uniqueness. And once you defeat this boss, you claim the OVA and the beta ends. For now. so now that the beta is over, I want to talk about all the things that the game does, all the aspects, what the game does well, what the game doesn't well, and basically kind of give you a small little review. Before I get into these points, please remember this is just a small beta, which the devs said is approximately 10% of the game, if not less, so I can't judge the full scope of the game on this. So I'm just gonna go off from what we have in the beta. So let's start with the good stuff. The world is very good in my opinion. It's dark and gritty, but it doesn't scare away from doing something goofy from time to time. I really like that and I really appreciate that. Atmosphere is captivating and very immersive, and yeah, it's as good as in the first game. I love it. Want to see more of this. Build customization seems really fun. Doing all the side content is super worth it because you can always find something useful, maybe a tar stone or an upgrade for a weapon or whatever that can change how you play the game. So I do really like this. Shell system is a good upgrade in a very interesting way, and it's also cool how it's presented, especially the memory sequences you play. Love them and can't wait to see them all for the shells. The story in general seems super interesting to me, and I do kind of like to see who the final boss will be or what twists will happen and stuff, because like right now I have no idea. Maybe the Undermatter, maybe Rook, maybe a completely new character, who knows. But yeah, if I learned something from Mortal Shell 1 is don't trust the big bird, so Rook, I'm having an eye out for you. Another big thing I need to praise is in general how much the game improved upon the first game in terms of movement, combat and feel. It's such a big step up compared to Mortal Shell 1 and I love it. I think more people will be able to get into this. The system of cleansing beacons is absolutely awesome, basically hiding mini dungeons into the beacons and not having them spread out all through the world and cluttering everything up. I like that. Good idea. Big fan of it. The enemy variety is genuinely fantastic. Of course, again, no idea how it continues, but I think if we go off from the trailers, this looks pretty promising. And Mortal Shell 1 had also a pretty damn good enemy variety for how short it was. So yeah, I'm not worried about this. And last but definitely not least are the levels. So far, nothing was super groundbreaking or outstanding, but everything was fun and entertaining. So I do really like that. So yeah, if we look at the list of positives, this game seems really great, and I really want to give this impression that the beta was great. And this brings me to the next category, the mediocre. I will not say that the bosses were outright bad, because I just don't think they were. But I will also not lie to you and tell you that these bosses are on par with even this average Souls-likes. If you fight bosses like Arlecchino and Lies of P or Ozma and Kazan, it will be pretty hard going to a game where the best boss so far was Tar Golem, who would probably be like a solid C-tier boss in most games. It's not bad, and I think there is some step up in the way the bosses are animated, how they move, and how the fights work, but I think these bosses are not quite up there yet. Though I will say the creativity with like the Magdalena fight, which maybe didn't lead to the most incredible fight ever, but a memorable one, is also something to be praised. So if they do cool and memorable wacky bosses like the Shepherd, Magdalena and stuff like that, maybe it's fine and maybe we don't need any crazy interesting mechanical bosses in this game. But honestly, I definitely want some cool ones because I think these devs are competent and I think they can do something better. This is also probably the only thing that I found really mediocre. Besides that, everything in the beta so far looked really promising. And yeah, this brings me to the bad. And obviously the bad things in this beta so far for me were the bugs. There are some bugs and issues, some rendering, popping, you know, just the stuff that usually gets patched out or not. But I trust these devs because they're cool, so yeah, let's hope for the best. And also, as I already mentioned, the achievement for defeating the tutorial boss was bugged for me, which is a shame, but I also hope this will be fixed in the full release. So yeah, if we look at this, overall, very promising game, but I just really have a hard time judging the full game on this, because if the game continues with this quality and improves later on, I'm very excited and can't wait. I definitely will be supporting this game as well as I can. I will be getting the pre-order edition and definitely make some more content and videos on this, because I am really passionate about this and I hope these devs succeed. Well, that was my little review of the Mortal Shell 2 beta. I really do hope it came across that I really loved my time with it and that I'm looking forward to the full release. And while I was working in this video, we got the information that the game is releasing on August 20th, which is honestly crazy soon. Less than a month if you buy the pre-order edition, which I will because I love these devs and want to support them. So yeah, I will definitely be making some more content on this game because I'm very passionate about the Mortal Shell world and very excited excited to explore more of it very soon. I think if they polish this game a little more and give me more interest and give me some interesting areas later in the game, I will be very happy, because as far as polishing the movement and the combat goes, they already succeeded for sure. And now I want to ask you, what did you like about the Mortal Shell beta if you played it? Do you agree with my points, or do you disagree with some of them? Do you wish for something that wasn't shown yet, or do you think they strayed too far away from Mortal Shell 1? I'd be very interested to hear your thoughts, and yeah, that's what these videos live from. However, with all that said then, thank you so much for watching this video and giving me your time. I appreciate it, and until then, bye!